Right. An extremely well-placed panel we just had, right? And it's been a while now since morning we have discussed AI, agentic AI, data security, cyber security, ethical AI, and whatnot, right? And now, as we speak, it's time we all secretly cares about, right? Which is who's writing the check, right? So before we invite our leaders, our investors, our panel to the stage, let's do a quick reality check, right? How many founders in the room? Show of hands, please. Wow. Show of hands. Perfect, perfect. How many founders believe they deserve funding? Show of hands. Some of them. All right. All right. Perfect. Perfect. And how many of you strongly believe, strongly believes that you're working on something unique, new, which has never been done before? No one? All right. I see some hands raised. We'll come to you. We'll come to you. All our investors are eagerly looking to you, right? Very good. Very good. So, let me tell you, let me now ask our investors. So, dear investors and our dear moderator, how many of you believe, every founder presents you or the real picture of their numbers, the unit economics? You believe there's 100% truth in it? Yes, no? All right. So you see, our panel hasn't even started and we had a first disagreement before we invite the panel, right? Let's also do a quick reality check, right? And I want each of you to participate in it. Reason being because that will add more value to the overall discussion that we'll just have, right? And let's settle the debate before the investors come up. And it is a very important question. I'll tell you why. Let me ask you what matters the most today, right? Please participate. First, is it technology, the tech stack, right? AI, agentic AI, LLMs? Is it the strong clinical validation in terms of healthcare startups? Or is it the revenue, of course? Or most importantly, is it those two letters in the name of a startup? AI. What is it? Revenue, yeah, funding, customers, or technology, or just a cool fancy name powered by AI? All of the above? You believe the name also does the magic, right? Some magic? Right. Fine. Fine. We are all ears. All right then. On that note, Hanisha, can we have our investors on the stage, please? Please do the introduction.
Yes, with a warm heart, I invite Ms. Anuradha Kanamanlapudi, Senior Technology Director, GE Healthcare. Joining her are Mr. Ranjit Menon, MD and Partner, Chirati Ventures, Mr. Vishnu Rajiv, Investment Partner, Speciali Invest, and Ms. Natasha Malpani, Founder of Boundless Ventures. Come on, let's give them a great round of applause.
So Ranjit, Vishnu, Natasha, and Anuradha, there is an infinite loop. I was talking to some of the startups. They actually believe that most of our investors don't understand technology or something that we are building. The investors out here think that the founders don't understand unit economics, right? Now let's settle the debate for once, right? And please, founders, keeps your questions civil, okay? All right, we'll open up for questions later. All right, I think the stage is all yours, Anuradha. We'll get started now.
Thank you, Naman, and good afternoon, everyone. So we are between you and the end of the day, so we will try to make it as interesting as possible. So today's topic is inside the VC playbook, what makes Indian health tech fundable. And this is true not just for health tech companies, right? It is true for any kind of companies, what makes it fundable. So if you look at it, the health tech space in India has kind of moved on from being, digitally enabled, digital transformation to pandemic-driven acceleration and so on and so forth. So now we are talking better things, right? We are talking business models, we are talking scale, we are talking about adoption, we are talking about workflow integration, we are talking about deep tech and a lot of those things. So with our panel over here, today we will try to understand what actually gets funded, what scales, how do you determine what the moats are, what do you think are the red flags when you hear investor pitches, And we will leave the most interesting section for the last on how do you actually get your first check before you go to the VCs, and what are the resources that are available in the country for setting up your health tech startup. So with we will start with a little bit of introductions, and it's only fair for me to ask the panelists to introduce themselves while I ask the questions. So we have Natasha from Boundless Ventures, we have Ranjit from Chirate, and we have Vishnu from Speciale Investment. So the first question is actually open to all. So we will start with you, Natasha. So the broad question is, the space is so crowded, right, in terms of health tech startups and all of that. So I heard that at least Google AI told me that there are 13,000 startups, and it's the $9 billion that have been already invested in India. There is another 20 billion or 200 billion waiting to be invested. So how do we actually find out from your experience what can be fundable right now? No.
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. So I'll just give you a very quick intro to Boundless before I answer. Boundless is an AI and frontier tech fund. So we only invest in frontier technology. We are cross-border, so we can invest in founders from anywhere in the world as long as there's one Indian diaspora founder on the team. And we come in at pre-seed seed, so very early, and then we double down at every stage. So just from our perspective, actually, while there's thousands of health tech companies that have been founded, we actually think we're very much at the start of a new wave when it comes to healthcare in India, right? One is that because of generative AI, you have completely new business models, technologies, and new pools of capital coming in that didn't exist before. So healthcare is a big area of interest for us, but we actually don't think of it just as healthcare. We separate it. So we think healthcare delivery, the business of actually delivering patient outcomes, is very different to clinical AI, which is saying how do you actually use AI in diagnostics or in terms of clinical workflows versus how you use AI in drug discovery or foundational research is very different versus how consumers are now going to use AI to rethink their own healthcare is very different. But basically, the broad framework we have is saying, okay, how does healthcare actually now become more personalized, accessible, and also more cost efficient from all stakeholder perspectives, right? Whether it's patients, doctors, researchers, etc. So, big pictures, we are very excited. Second point, though, is we're very, very early, right? If I ask you what are the big outcomes in healthcare or health tech today in India, I don't know. Does anyone want to answer? What are the big health tech companies that have come out of India? Cure.ai, exactly. And Cure is very interesting, right? Because Cure is AI diagnostics. They basically they have AI imaging for TB, and a lot of their revenue comes from WHO in Africa. That's a global company that started very recently. But what are the Indian health tech successes? Right. So it's almost that we are the starting point today. In our view, I'll give you a more nuanced answer of how we think about the 4 different buckets. But the point is that everything is fundable with the right team, business model, timeline, and the capital is coming. So this is a good time to be in health tech.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Ranjit Menon. I'm a partner at a fund called Chirate Ventures. We manage about $1.4 billion. We've been investing in India for the last 20 years. We've committed close to $150 million into health. This is across medical devices. We've done a couple of investments in biomaterials. Increasingly, the focus has been on digital platforms and now really on AI and generative AI and so on and so forth, right? Our investment thesis in health is built on 2 pillars. One is the fact that we're looking at technologies that can bring about better access. We have very poor doctor-patient population, ratios, and we believe technology can really play a significant role in building better access. And the other one is really improving clinician productivity. We had the hospital folks in the last panel talk about a bunch of stuff, but really, how can technology help doctors, do stuff better and faster? And I really think in that context, AI is going to really change the world. It'll be interesting to see how regulations try and keep up with the pace of technology that is changing, landscape that is changing. Because I really think whether it's the FDA in the US, SFDA in China, or wherever, is playing a catch-up game here, really, in terms of how AI is being used. Whether there is regulations or not, all of us are already asking ChatGPT or Claude as to what to do, right? And it's interesting when you meet the doctor. The doctor is also, equally pissed. When you ask him, Claude is already telling me this. What do you think, right? So there is very, very clear adoption at a consumer level with respect to health, and using AI to try and figure out even before you go to a doctor, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how regulations try to keep up with this. But from a investment standpoint, we are very early stage focused. Seed, pre-series A, series A, and pre-series B is what we tend to focus on. And like I said, we are extremely, about 10% of the fund would go into healthcare investments across these sectors, whether medical devices, although our focus is more on small devices, not really large ones, but really on technologies that can improve patient outcomes, productivity of doctors, and so on and so forth.
Can you hear me, right? Okay. My name is Vishnu. I'm a partner at Special. Special is a deep tech, deep science focused fund. So a lot of our investments are heavily rooted on science and engineering based products and startups. We are pre-seed, seed stage, typically come at like sub 10 crore check sizes, but enough follow-on capital to invest in the the rounds which succeed. We invest across space tech, robotics, semiconductors, energy, and healthcare. Life sciences is also one of the verticals we look at it. Within life sciences and healthcare, I would say from a deep tech angle, we primarily look into therapeutics, diagnostics, and medical devices. We don't have an investment in medical devices, but we have come very close to investing in a few. From the therapeutic side, we actively look into bioplatforms. We have a company in AI for drug discovery called Peptris, but then also a couple of companies in the pipeline which uses bioplatforms but also use AI's aid. And to answer your question of what is hot in the thing, the market in India for at least the areas that I look into has been getting sufficient non-dilutive capital from government sources, especially through BIRAC, for a long period of time, probably for the last decade. And we are seeing the fruits of all of those efforts. More matured companies are coming to the early pipeline. I would say a lot of my focus is on bioplatforms and therapeutics, which can be scalable. Need not always AI be the central character in it, but have a very prominent supporting role. And that's probably where India's strength is going to be. We are not traditionally known for our drug development or bringing out multiple drugs. If we have to accelerate that process, we need to take the aid of artificial intelligence and all the technologies that are being developed.
Thanks everyone. So Vishnu and I were having a chat for a long time, before the session started. And what I understood from him is that he has a lot of deep tech investments, a lot of cool stuff. So he has investments in Agnicool, he has investments in some nuclear inspecticity, nuclear energy, along with HealthTech. And in HealthTech, he actually talked about oncolytics, which is a virus that could go in and cure solid state tumors. So Vishnu, from your experience, right, as an investor, how do you find out red flags? Because you're early stage deep tech, where there is a lot of research, there are a lot of papers, there is a lot of promise. How do you identify, what is a red flag versus what is really fundable? And do you see any difference from the other sectors versus health tech in this area?
Red flags.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I know that much to differentiate. The stage that I
You
am.
just go by gut.
A lot actually by gut. But to be very fair, right? Like VC is risky. Within VC, early stage pre-seed seed is the riskiest. And within all of that, deep tech is even most the riskiest. So I just operate at that extreme end of risk in picking. So which basically means that I have to make decisions with great amount of ambiguity. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity in everything. And so while my red flag might not be their red flags, or there might be common red flags as well, but see, if I have to go for it, I won't want to call it red flag, but things that I look in within the at pre-seed seed, essentially every bet is a founder bet. Yes, I'm doing deep tech. Yes, I want to look into the market technology. Everything is true, and I look deep into it. But the founders are the ones, and that is where I will look for green flags as well as red flags. I love multiple founders in a team. If it is a single founder, that question always goes, why are you a single founder? The question always goes, why are you, uh, if it's a couple coming together and building, again, I want to know how the decision making happening. If they are relatives, father, son, father, daughter, etc., how does the dynamics work? If the daughter is a CEO and if father is not the CEO, and will the family hierarchy and the elder younger relationship come into business decisions? So it's so those are like those things matter a lot. If I know better more than you, if you're sitting in front of me, ask very trivial questions. In fact, investors usually don't know anything. But by the virtue of just sitting in front of founders, we learn something. And if we know better than you, then again, your know-how is very difficult. Founders' interaction with each other is very important. Sometimes, sometimes we pick up on the words that you use. You said the gut, right? Like, I mean, I'll give you an example, not a health tech company, but a single founder came to me to asking for investment. Really good guy, very smart, recent BITS Pilani graduate, very well spoken, storyteller, amazing. Asked a question about like, oh, why do you not have a co-founder? And his immediate answer was, I have given a job posting in LinkedIn to hire a co-founder. Too many red flags in that line. If you hire a co-founder, you are not looking for an equal. You're looking for an employee. Co-founders are to be equal relationship. You need to it is like dating. You need to court each other for long. You need to know how that works. Job posting, all of those were like, I mean, he's doing well, but I'm still glad I went with my intuition of like those words are very important. So you need to be very thorough about what you're doing, and yeah, you need to know what you're doing. That's what I would say.
So Vishnu, thanks for that. I know you talked a lot about founder psyche. So Ranjit, maybe next question to you. So in the healthcare world, right, you cannot be a master of all. So there is regulation, there is ecosystem, there are collaborators, there are subject matter experts, and all of that. So how do you see that playing out when you're actually making your picks from the pitchers?
Yeah, I think so. Like Vishnu was saying, I think when we are also very early stage in our investment thesis, and the team means everything, because there's very little data outside of the team that we can really rely on, right? And there are a few things that we look for. I mean, one is the team's ability to attract talent. It's just not two people who build a company, right? And in healthcare, it's a little bit more complicated than if you're building a consumer company, for example. It's not like Monday morning you can wake up and say, let me start a healthcare company, because there is like you're saying, clinical workflows that are there, regulatory requirements across geographies, understanding of that, right? Understanding where the incentives lie. It's not, I mean, if you look at the healthcare system, the incentives are very, very different. If you are a payer, if you are a provider, or you are a patient, I mean, and so having that alignment, understanding where the money is going to come from, and all of that, I think is that basic understanding is important before you get started trying to build something in healthcare. So it is super critical. While it's great to have good technology person and who's extremely passionate, but it's also important to understand the landscape a little bit from a commercial standpoint, right? At the end of the day, I mean, we as a fund, we have a 10-year life cycle. We have to make sure that the company builds the product, goes to market, scales revenues, and we have to exit. So we have to make sure that the team has the ability to kind of attract more capital, more talent, and then that comes from the overall ecosystem, right? And have the networks. I mean, the ability to build networks. Again, I mean, if you're selling to the hospital, it's a very different kind of equation there, as against if you're selling into pharma, right, where the gestation periods are extremely long. Or if you're building in consumer health, then understanding the consumer mindset as to what can potentially work there. I think so some of these things are super critical even before we get into the technology or into the unit economics of the business and so on and so forth, right, which can all change over a period of time. And we've also seen companies start at a point and then end up completely being different from where we started, right? Another interesting thing, couple of companies, having said all of this, I've also seen that people with very little baggage and possibly understanding of the ecosystem come up with stuff that are little out of the whack, in the sense that which can actually work, because people who spend a lot of time in healthcare carry the baggage of saying that this cannot work. I have not seen this work anywhere else. So it is a little bit of both. I've seen examples of investment bankers, startup companies in healthcare that are focused on data and stuff like that, because they come with strong understanding of the domain of data, but not necessarily healthcare, and their ability to visualize something that, because they don't have the baggage, is very interesting from what they think about it. So I've seen both examples play out, but very critical that we have a team that is fairly complementary, not just focused on tech and building a product, but also thinking about how it can be commercialized, how it can be scaled. And like you said, I mean, I've not built a medical device all through my life. I have no understanding how to build a medical device, but what does it take to build a good company is something that I really understand, given our experience of what we've been doing over the last 20 years. So I'm looking for people who understand the domain, who understands what the consumer wants or the customer wants, and then the rest, capital, structure, governance, compliance, all of that, I can help you build networks and so on and so forth. But that's really what I'm looking for, and how we go about the process.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So we heard about founder psyche, we heard about collaborators, ecosystem. So Natasha, next question for you. So you represent a cross-border VC fund. You also worked on AI, pre-Gen AI, and you invest in frontier tech beyond healthcare, right? So where do you see the different business models playing out in healthcare, in AI, and how is it different from in India versus the other countries that you've seen?
That's a great question. So,
Is this better? So I'll divide the answer, right? In India, when it comes to healthcare delivery, actually one of our portfolio companies is Super Health. Maybe you know them. Their vision is to build 100 bed hospitals across Bangalore, and their first hospital is in Kormangala. They are India's first AI-powered hospital. So they are rethinking the delivery of healthcare bottom up from a real estate, financing perspective, as well as an outcome perspective in terms of the choice of specialities that they offer, how they actually rethink patient wait times, what sort of insurance they provide, and how they scale up. Right. Now, that sort of business model where you're actually completely rebuilding and rethinking hospitals, I think it's very interesting to think of India, as a market leader in building greenfield sites, right? So you are in the from a public market perspective, of course, you already have a lot of success, when it comes to players like in Apollo, mid-size, you've got companies like Max Healthcare who are rethinking healthcare. But now what we are seeing is there's opportunity to rethink the actual delivery of healthcare, both single speciality and multi-speciality, from India in a way that you can't really do in the UK or US. So we are very bullish on that space. When it comes to when it comes to rethinking clinical AI, saying, okay, how do we rethink diagnostics? How do we rethink X-rays? Someone mentioned Cure already, right? There are companies who are innovating, but the companies in the US like Tempus are far ahead, right? Tempus is already listed. So the sort of innovation that people have done in X-ray diagnostics, et cetera, in the US is a totally different ball game. And over time, capital in healthcare, as we discussed, capital and regulation does become a moat. So clinical AI, we are still to see, breakout outcomes. Then when it comes to saying, what is actually happening in a foundational model, frontier tech model, right? Who's building foundational models in immunology? Who's building foundational models in cancer therapeutics? Maybe some of you have seen Isomorphic in London raise a $2 billion round, or Google DeepMind spin out in the drug discovery space. They've not had a single drug go to even phase 1 trial, right? But they raised $2 billion first check. So again, I actually think you are going to see some very interesting foundational model drug discovery companies, platform companies come out of India. It's just going to take longer, because in India, you have to navigate the grant ecosystem, you have to navigate the government, you have to navigate, there's a different way to build ecosystem and partnerships. You can't raise that money to begin with. So it will happen in India. It'll just take a little more time and it'll look a little different. And then again, in consumer AI, we are quite bullish about consumer AI coming from India. Of course, you can say that the largest consumer AI companies are already ChatGPT Health, or will be an Amazon or Google or Microsoft, right? All the hyperscalers are getting into consumer health in a big way, and I'm sure everyone in this room is already using AI to ask their own personal questions. But, for example, there's a company called August that's funded by Axel. They already have 1 million users, where they are taking your data, they are personalizing the answers. Right? So it's very different from using a chat GPT, because they have your memory, they have your context, they can give you nudges. So I think when it comes to saying, what can we do for an Indian consumer across different verticals, we haven't even begun. So consumer AI and greenfield healthcare delivery, we're very excited about from India. Foundational models, we do spend more time looking at US, UK companies. But again, from India, what we're interested in is data sets. Because see, when you're talking about foundational models in AI, these models have intelligence, but they need to be trained on data, right? Now, healthcare data is not like, you can't scrape the internet for healthcare data. You actually have to go to there are public databases, but in the end, you do have to tie up with either pharma companies or hospitals or clinicians to get that data. And actually, most clinical trials are sorely missing South Asian population data, right? Like we still need our genomes to be screened, etc. So we're sitting on a very, very valuable data bank that we've not commercialized in India yet. So we think there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to commercialize data to come out of India.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, of course, data is a big moat, and actually having longitudinal data across a patient is even a lot more difficult than you do anything else. So Ranjit, from your perspective, right, to meet the end-to-end goal of starting a company and taking it to scale, where do you think is the longest time it takes Where do people get stuck?
Yeah, so see, raising capital at seed, I think it's fairly easy because just the amount of capital that's available, number of investors. The challenge really comes, even Series A. If you're a very good team, you've very some small proof points, you still will be able to get to a Series A kind of the real challenge for most companies, and this is nothing specific to healthcare, but in general, we've seen a lot more companies fail between the Series A and Series B. That's really the difficult things, because that's really when the real world hits you, right? In terms of whether the product is really working, customers are really paying for it, competition playing out, your ability to attract talent that makes there. And then we've also seen, like Vishnu was saying, I mean, founders not finding alignment between themselves and what they want to do. So I think those are all really challenges that we have seen in general with startups. The Series A to Series B stage is I believe, the most difficult in terms of fundraising. With respect to healthcare, I think the gestation period is a little bit more longer, again, depending on what kind of a company you are. I mean, consumer health is slightly different, but if you really think about, if you're building a product into a pharma company, I mean, in drug discovery, for example, or medical device for that matter, I think the gestation periods are longer, and so um, you know having those proof points in terms of clinical validation from key opinion leaders, and then getting to demonstrate the effectiveness of the product, right? People underestimate the I mean, because it's a very top down view. If you look at it, healthcare, massive spends, right? But really, if you disrupt a clinical workflow, your ability to get in is that much more complicated, right? How do you build something that aligns itself with the existing workflow so that it's not very difficult to the clinician, or for that matter, aligning to making sure who's actually your customer? Is it the insurance company? Is it the all of those makes a huge difference, and those start hitting in the Series A, Series B stages, and that I think is really the most difficult stage. And once you cross that, I think you've been extremely valuable.
Thanks for that. So we'll switch gears now. And Vishnu, when we started the session, you talked about BIRAC funding and other government funding. So would you like to tell our audience on what are the various sources of government funding and the other sources that are available even before a very passionate founder comes to a VC?
I'm sure they already know, but BIRAC is the nodal agency which has provided ample amount of grants. And with the government's RDI scheme, if you haven't heard about it, please Google about it. There's almost 1 lakh crores worth of money has been allocated to provide catalytic support to the deep tech ecosystem. And out of that, 10,000 crores is dedicated for BIRAC to distribute. So there is a lot of capital available through ANRF, Anusandhan National Research Foundation, and BIRAC. A lot of them are in the form of grants. Some of them are in the form of matching equity, which means you have to raise an equivalent amount of equity to match with the grant. And some of them are in the form of a matching debt as well. So yeah, and then there are state government schemes. This is what a lot of people miss out on. State governments have especially some of the most proactive state governments have equity as well as grant capital available. Additionally, all of these incubators around the country, CCAMP, CCMB, Venture Center, all of them have, again, grants to distribute, capital available, and equity money to do it as well. So many times to get yourself started up, you don't have to come to the institutional VC. You can and you should avail, especially if from a deep tech perspective, the science risk is very, very high. The private sector won't come and invest in you. So that is the most important factor someone needs to keep in mind, right? Like, to eliminate the science risk, or at least bring the science risk to minimum, it is always good to get non-dilutive grant capital. And once you have a little bit of the science risk reduced, and then a proof of concept, or in life sciences, it would be milestones. Can you at least get to a first few milestones of, like, if if you can even do your in vitro studies, if you are a drug development company, you can then come to the private investors to seek capital. So, yeah.
So I think time is up. He's rung the alarm twice. So thank you, Vishnu, Ranjit, and Natasha for your insights. So it's really heartening to hear that not just optimism, there is also realism that you have admitted. And there is still, a lot of funds out there, which the young entrepreneurs or older entrepreneurs or passionate folks can actually tap into, start their own ventures and try something experimental before you hit it big. And thank you, NASCOM, and everyone else on the team for giving us this opportunity to talk to all of you today.
Thank you, leaders, for this very insightful session. I now request Mr. Sudhanshu to felicitate our speakers. Like all good things that come to an end, we are at the final leg of today's sessions.